Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. It is Jeremy Werner, Derek Piper. We are live on our YouTube channel, and already 100 people have joined us because they are pumped about what they just saw tonight. And I got to be honest with you, I'm still buzzing from just watching a phenomenal basketball game. The back and forth between Illinois and Purdue. These are two really good Big Ten teams. I think we can say that again about Illinois with their third straight win. Illinois rallies down 10 in the second half to take the lead. Then Purdue makes their run again and takes a 5-point lead with about 2.5 minutes left. But Derek, Illinois closed. I had written at one point, I always have kind of like two things going to take people behind the scenes about my quick hits. And I'd written, Illinois still can't figure out Purdue, still can't figure out how to close games. Well, I just flipped it after they end the game on a 16-3 run. Illinois finally figured out Purdue, finally figured out how to close games. 16-3 in the final 2:38, 13-1 to end this game. Made big shots. Most importantly, Derek, felt like they got big stops, which was hard to do against Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith, who are as good as most duos in college basketball right now. So watching them was phenomenal. They're a well-coached team, obviously, but they struggled to stop Illinois. Will Riley, 22 points, played 37 minutes, a season high. Trey White, 20 points, 9 rebounds, the late season resurgence of Trey White we'll get into. We'll get into what this means for the postseason, but 6 straight year, 20-plus wins for Illinois. Most importantly, Derek, this team's getting hot going into the postseason.
Yeah, it's a massive win for a number of reasons. Right there, you're playing what you feel like is your best basketball in a while, if not all year. Obviously, matching that West Coast trip, the Oregon game, and we saw some peak performances from this team and what they can be. But to do it against the opponent here recently, back-to-back ranked teams, back-to-back quad one wins is a big deal. And I think that piecing together some offensive progress, we've seen, I wrote about it in kind of some multi-dimensional playmaking. You know, Will Riley can do some things. Obviously, KJ and Tommy. It wasn't a great night for KJ, and we'll talk about that shot that he hit. Man, what an epic one. And I think if that's it should be his lasting impression here at Illinois, at least in terms of this building, it's a great one to leave. Will Riley, also, I asked him about that after the game, you got the Orange Crush chanting one more year, and it's a guy who's playing like he won't have one more year here at Illinois. He looks like a first-round pick. So, but I think just the confidence in the late game moments, a growth moment, I think, in late game moments to be able to pull that thing out is something that you really want to see for this team going forward, because March Madness is all about close games, tense moments. Can you have the composure? Can you have the guy who's going to step up and make the play? And it's not just as the shot. It's even the poke away steal that Will Riley had defensively, and a nice call by Brad Underwood to go double team on TKR and have that pay off. So this is really something that I think they can carry over and try to use going forward, because that's been a big knock on them here recently, or just over the course of the season, is are they trustworthy in crunch time? They've had a lot of moments where it's gotten really dicey. And I think they also got over the hump in terms of, sorry to use like a Mike Woodson line there, getting over the hump, but these recent marquee home games, it's been the same script over and over. And I mentioned this too in my preview, is that it's always been a tight game going into the closing stretch. They're either up a couple possessions or down a possession or two, and they fail to execute enough up to being able to close it out and finish the game. So when this thing flips on its head, it's a 1 or 2 point lead for Illinois, then it turns into quickly a 5-point lead for Purdue with like 2.5 to go. It's like, oh, here we go again, where you have KJ smoke the layup and Braden Smith hits the 3 and
Turnovers.
The turnover, it just looked like it was about to unravel yet again. And to Brad's credit, to the team's credit, they didn't let that happen. So we'll dive into all the specifics of why that was, but I think that's a huge moment for this team at this point in time.
Big shots late in this game, particularly from KJ. You mentioned the step back with 40 seconds left. That was a no. I was telling you, I got to admit, I want the ball in Will Riley or Kyle Boswell's hands, because KJ was struggling. I mean, he had 7 assists in this one, had turnover late, was taking some of these threes that just felt ill-advised when getting to the rim, getting to the paint, and then getting your shots off of that. But Purdue was awful at guarding the rim, and Illinois kept finally attacking in the second half. And they got open threes. And when this team makes shots, they are dangerous. And they made 7 of 15 threes in the second half, really got hot there late from three, Derek. And that's when this team can do a lot of damage, but they got to get stops on the other end. And I thought that was the biggest key. Purdue missed 6 shots to end the game. Most importantly, as you said, Brad Underwood doubled Trey Kaufman-Renn. They didn't do it most of the night because they didn't want those Purdue shooters to get going. But when Trey has 29 points and just, Benham Rickhouse, Tomislav Visic, whoever you put on him, just can't contain him in that pick and roll with Braden Smith, who's just so in control in that pick and roll. But finally got the ball out of his hands. And sure, Braden Smith missed some shots that sometimes he's going to make because he's a hell of a player. But he just got the ball out of his hands and forced some other guys to shoot the ball, and they just looked uncomfortable. They got late in the shot clock, had a shot clock violation there in the final couple of minutes. Like, there's some big defense played late in that game, and those are the moments you got to see that, right? Like, can this team make an adjustment? Can this team make those stops to help them set up, their shot making ability?
Yeah, you got to have it. And Braden did get a really good look, a couple of them down the stretch. And right after KJ hit the three, he comes off a screen and has a pretty quality look that, he's shooting a 41% clip this year that Matt Painter will take his odds on that going up there and seeing where it goes all season long, no doubt. But I did think that things changed. Obviously, the first half we talked about, so much of this lead up was what can Illinois do in ball screen coverage? How much of their shift and scheme can make it difficult for a guy that just destroys drop coverage? He's a great mid-range shooter. He can hit the three on a pull-up. He can then get into the paint and facilitate, throw to TKR, pass out to shooters. And Illinois just they did a terrible job of trying to contain him in the pick and roll. And, it is a pick your poison type of deal. This is a top 10 offense in the country for a reason. But
I just want somebody else to shoot the ball. Just get the ball out of those two's hands because they were cooking, man. And Braden, man, like he is, I was kind of thinking Tanjay for Big Ten Player of the Year, but the way he's kind of closed the season and just seeing him up close again, it's just a reminder of how good he is and how much he controls games. And I was talking with Doug Bouchon. He was like, he gave me a comp for him, and I was thinking the guy he reminds me of the most, I'm not saying he's going to be this in the NBA, but he reminds me in college is Jalen Brunson. He's just always in control of the game, makes big shots, gets his teammates open. It just feels like he's always the maestro in the game. So I just wanted to applaud Braden because, man, he's so good. And I think a lot of teams are probably hoping he leaps to the NBA after this year because he's a heck of a college player.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be so lucky, though. I was looking at Gavoni's top 100 that just came out, and he's like 82 or something like that. And I could see, Matt Painter says afterwards that guy's going to play 10 years in the NBA. I wouldn't doubt him. He's small, and you wonder about defensively. But,
for sure,
man, he's a phenomenal playmaker, really, really good shooter, both mid and three as far as that goes. And yeah, you let him get where he wanted to go. And at times, Tommy didn't show – enough or at all on some of those, and Kylan's chasing and he's just going right to the rim, so that was discouraging. But it felt like there was a change there at some point in the second half. In particular, you look at about the 11-minute mark in the second half through up to a minute left, and then Braden takes some shots late to try to desperation, the three to tie, and then after that he went a stretch where he takes 4 shots in 10 minutes, and he only makes 1. He made 1 shot from the 11-minute down to 1 minute. So that was Illinois, I think, kind of forcing his hand a little bit. They showed a little bit more, and when you get on one side, I think the help from the corner would kind of show a little bit, and just not give him the feeling like he was all alone and could get wherever he want with the ball. So I thought that was a good adjustment. It needed one. They had to do something different. This is a game where obviously you wish you had Merez for a variety of reasons. One, to guard TKR straight up. Number 2, you can get a lot more agility and coverage with your stabs or just hard hedges, whatever traps in that ball screen. But they made do with what they had tonight, and it was a lot better than the second half, both in terms of containing TKR and also Braden.
In the second half, they just got downhill, right? Like the first half, you saw them settling for so many threes. At one point, they'd missed 11 straight threes before Will Riley got on his heater, 7-0 to end that first half. And kudos to Will. He really carried them, let them kind of stick around and keep pace with Purdue. And I just think his playmaking has been superb. Just the two-man game between him and Tomislav Visic right now is really strong. But man, these guys are cutting. It's just so much fun to watch this team all of a sudden cut to the basket. Trey White has a lot to do with that, but Kylan Boswell is cutting, and it just gives them more playmaking ability. And Derek, a way to get to the rim when you don't have a lot of guys that have that explosiveness to the rim, but just their cutting ability and passing ability has kind of opened that up offensively. And then they just get step in threes, right? Because of all of that. And Trey White has gotten an absolute heater from those corner threes, made a big one tonight. Ben Humrickhouse, kudos to him, man. He seems like he's settling into that bench role really well. Obviously, going up against TKR is not easy for him, but it's just when this team gets downhill, Derek, and then shoots threes off of that, that's when they're really dangerous. We saw it against Michigan. We saw it in the second half tonight. That's got to be the mindset for this team offensively.
No doubt. The cutting has changed a lot. It makes this offense a lot harder to guard. It gives them some actual off-ball movement, which they haven't had for large stretches of the season. And I think also the fact that you can get downhill creation with different guys. Like it was for a good chunk of time, just KJ and ball screens and everyone else kind of standing as either a spacer, spot-up shooter. And it's really just kind of playing a two-man game around that. But now it's where, Will Riley, tonight you ran so much through Will, which you should have. And I think that's something that they obviously have a lot of confidence in, and he can create and get to spots. And I didn't see Purdue having a really good matchup for him. I thought he'd have a good game, and it played out that way. Kylan, when he's going to the rim, is such a really added bonus, and that's something you need out of him, a confident Kylan Boswell. And, yeah, I mean, Trey's a really good cutter. Will's probably your best cutter, especially here recently. And like you said, him and Tommy have a really good chemistry about them. And Tommy to see it, to deliver the passes, and then Will to just have the instinctual reads. I even thought, on the note of cutting, though, one of the biggest plays of the game was that timeout, I think, when Illinois gets down 5. And you come out, and I don't know if it was a design play or if it was an instinctual thing by Trey, where he kind of slips a screen. He's screening for KJ, and he notices that Purdue's trying to switch it, or they ended up busting the matchup, and then both go to KJ, and he slips. I don't know if that was designed or just, again, something that he did, get an and one out of that. It was a touchy and one. It was one that Matt Painter wasn't happy about. I know you turned to me and it was like, there's the makeup, which we kind of were waiting for all game after the KJ 3-point foul.
Which was just atrocious. Just atrocious. And it sure looked like the referee, Randy Richardson, I believe is his name.
Yeah.
It sure looked like when we saw it, like he owned up to it to Underwood, which I don't know if it made Underwood feel any better, but I told you at that time, they got to make up for it at some point. It felt like that touch call, Trey White and one was their attempt to do that.
Yeah, and that was huge. That was a huge play. Then Ben hits a 3, and then you start getting some stops. But like you said, yeah, it is a situation where, especially in a game where this team, and just a lot of situations with Tommy pulling the big away from the basket, you got to have that downhill attacking mentality. And this team got in trouble at points tonight of settling too much from 3. Now, it paid itself off in terms of the volume, and even Matt Painter was kind of doing well, it could go this way, it could go that way thing tonight about Illinois. Is like when they're making threes, they're really tough, and when they're not making threes, then they kind of are their own worst enemy. So they had a stretch where they were 2 for 20 from 3, and they were really struggling and lost a lot of momentum offensively. But yeah, it's the balance of that, and even the inside out stuff. That was a big theme in the Michigan game, getting downhill, cutting off the ball to the rim, but also then kind of in and then kick out and hit 3. So I do like where this offense is a lot more than I did a few weeks ago. And I think a lot of it is Trey's emergence, and then a lot of it is just multiple ball handlers, playmakers that can do some things.
Just taking a load off Kasper Siakis while Will Riley's kind of been on the rise. Obviously, Kasper's has been pretty shaky, and that 3-pointer was just a Dumb and Dumber totally redeem yourself moment, right? Like just such a clutch bucket, and he had so many clutch moments early in the season that he has not played all that well at the end of the season, but he carried them early in the season. So now Will Riley steps up. Now Trey White steps up. While you were talking there, Derek, I was doing math. I was listening to you, but I'm scribbling down math here because Trey White's last 4 games are amazing. Last 4 games, 17.3 points on 67% shooting, 9 of 15 from 3. That's 60%, and 7 rebounds per game. Where'd this come from? This guy was out of the rotation for a couple games. Brad Underwood could say he was sick. He was sick for 2 games, okay? And then 2 games he didn't play. He wasn't in the rotation, Derek. And all of a sudden, he has turned it up. I give him a lot of kudos for sticking through that, coming back, playing hard. Let's be honest, a month ago, I didn't know if Trey White was going to be a big part of this team now or in the future. And now I look at this and I'm like, he's playing an all Big Ten level right now. We saw that in spurts early in the season. So he's just giving them something different, right? On the glass, the athleticism, the ability to get to the rim, the cutting. And now I don't think he's going to hit 60% of his threes the rest of the year, but if he can make 35 of them, 35% of those threes, that's huge for this team. So what a renaissance here for Trey White. And what do you think it's added to the team?
This version is super valuable. And to have somebody that can make quality looks from the corner is something that, Jake Davis has done at times. But outside of that, we've seen Ben Humrickhouse when he's in a groove, he can make those. But that's just, kind of a lot of times your fifth option or your fourth or fifth option on the court scoring wise, and to go out there and make those shots can really be a killer for your defense. And certainly the rebounding, which we know can come on putbacks, offensive rebounds, second chance opportunities. But he was skying for defensive rebounds. I mean, you noted at one time the hang time, man, up there, being able to snatch those down is big. And he's flashed at times as being somebody that you can, move the needle with defensively. I think it needs to be a little bit more consistent if you're still willing to try to demand more and more and see if you can get more and more out of him. But yeah, this guy that you've gotten of late is someone you hope to get. He started his 82nd game tonight at the high major level. For a high major team, tonight was 82 starts, and it looked like it. It looked like a guy that, had the poise or just kind of the feel and confidence to go out there and make an impact. And you give him credit for riding that storm. I think Brad, there's more to it than he was just sick. Brad kind of did give he left some breadcrumbs at one time saying, if there's something about my rotation decisions, it's shooting. And that was Jake playing more and Trey playing less, and Trey wasn't making threes. Trey at one point was 4 for 24 from 3 in the Big Ten play, and now he is stepping up and obviously making those and doing a lot more along with that. So credit to him for sticking it out. And, yeah, I mean, this guy being not even obviously at this bar, but being somebody that's showing up night in and night out, changes this team quite a bit.
Shout out to Scott, who's live on our YouTube channel. We'll get to some super chats. If you got those later, we'll get to some of your questions here. Scott, stat of the game, only 8 turnovers. Second stat of the game, 20 assists. Yeah, 20 assists to 28 field goals really well. But that turnover number, Derek, last 4 games, 9, 5, 9, 8. Single digits 4 games in a row. This team had 5 games of single-digit turnovers before this 4-game stretch in the entire season. So, I mean, KJ, we can talk about some of the shots not going in. Last 4 games, he's got 20 assists to 7 turnovers. Like, the turnovers are kept in check for him. I mean, 1.8 per game or whatever that is for him. That's really improved. Kylan Boswell is taking care of the ball better, getting to the rim, getting the free throw line, which I love to see about Kylan Boswell. Their decision-making, their passing on offense has been far better. Sometimes the shot selection is what I get bothered with decision-making, but the passing, the ball handling has certainly been better. And I think that's due to the offensive, adjustments they've made, just kind of, cutting and playing with multiple playmakers.
Yeah, I think having Tommy consistently in the lineup, that's a real thing. I know Brad talks about that a lot. It does take pressure off of not only KJ, but I think a lot of people of putting the ball in his hands at the top of the key. And I know Tommy was out for a big stretch tonight of sitting on the bench, and Illinois was better when Ben Humrickhouse was playing.
+4 with Ben on the court today, 0 with Tommy.
Yeah, so that's certainly something that was different tonight than what we've come to expect. Although, yeah, I mean, he was good in the second half against Michigan too. But yeah, I think the ball handlers have made, less mistakes ultimately. There's been times where Illinois, I noted to Joey at one point during the game just how much KJ was playing off the ball tonight. There have been times where Will's just been more steady in terms of not having just the pick six or just the easy giveaway to someone else. I'm not knocking totally KJ. I think he's obviously, been able to do enough here recently to contribute to that stat. But I think part of it also, and Will is somebody that it felt like earlier in the year, he was gonna, if he got cut off from his drive, he was just gonna pull up from three and take a tough pull up jump shot. But now he spins and spins and spins. I was gonna sarcastically tweet out, my son has no idea what's going to hit him one day. When he grows up and we're playing the driveway, I'm just going to spin until I'm open. That obviously is a great move.
Well, when you're 6'9", that lanky, right, and you got that old man game plus a little bit of athleticism, it can work pretty well.
I won't have the athleticism, but the old man game will be something. And he does it really well. He's just man, how composed he seems to be. The game is just, you can see how much easier it's gotten for him. He's so much more confident. And look at him tonight, man. 22 points, talking to Raph afterwards. That's the Will Riley that you thought you were getting, and you hoped it would click into place over time. And it was bumpy at times, but, man, last month or so has been awesome.
Yeah, we'll have a little game here. But I was thinking the prince that was promised with Will Riley. It's been the same with KJ over the entire season. It's been ups and downs with those freshmen, but that's what you expect. But those two are ridiculous talents. We'll have a little game here later that's going to be fun. We'll talk about Big Ten seeding, NCAA seeding here coming up. But one thing I want to ask you before we talk about the postseason, Derek, is Merez Johnson Jr. Brad Underwood said on the radio and pregame tonight that Merez was in a practice court and running up and down the court. So that is a big thing. He sounds very hopeful they will get him for the postseason. So we'll have to get follow-ups with that. What does that look like? Obviously, he's going to be rotating with Tomislav, and that gives you something different that you really could have used tonight against TKR, who's just an unbelievable player. What improvement he's made. I think we saw the flashes of it last year in the game at Purdue, but now he's just getting 20 every night. Just really skilled down there, really tough. But Merez would have helped that. Gives you a different flavor. But what should we expect minutes-wise, and how does that impact everything else, especially Benham Rickhouse? I think that would move him more towards the three again at times.
It's a good question. It's hard to really know what exactly it's going to look like for Merez. I know that from a physicality standpoint, I expect him to be what we've expected in terms of a guy that's not built like a freshman, a guy that has great athleticism and is going to play really, really hard. I think for somebody to be taken out for a couple of weeks, you maybe lose your gauge on just the feel as far as that goes, and you don't want him to foul too much, to lose some of his rhythm and that lead to, foul trouble, maybe a little bit of off balance, undisciplined type of things. And
especially with the defense they're playing, which I think suits him, but he hasn't done it a lot, right? Like they're going to hedge a little bit more here.
Yeah, I think he can be great at it. I think he can really, really make it disruptive for ball handlers to get out there. And maybe because of his recovery time, he might be able to stay an extra half second to a second that Tommy just can't, because the foot speed's not there to be able to get back and recover. So I think Merez could be a huge bonus in terms of doing some things like that. Offensively, I don't know, touch around the basket. You're not asking to, play through him a bunch anyway. It's just kind of putbacks and, be a screener and roller and those type of things. So, is it going to be 15 minutes a night, 12 to 15 to start? I could see that being something that's kind of in the cards, but I guess, it's something that they'll have to gauge in practice and see how rusty he is, how much he's able to get back into a decent amount of conditioning, in time for this Big Ten tournament and beyond.
The other thing I think about is the spacing on offense, right? Like with the way, is Trey going to continue this? Can you play those two together? Obviously if Trey's shooting like he is right now, but also you're not going to have as much as that cutting. You're not going to have as much as that space for Tommy, but then you're trading off with defense, with rebounding, a lot of those things. So it'll just be fascinating to watch how that goes. Big question, Derek. Are you buying this team for the postseason now with his 3-game win streak? How confident are you in this team right now?
So we did this after Michigan. I think I did 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I was at 6.5.
Yeah, I'd elevate it. I would go.
This is an elevator win for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's something that now pushes you into the optimistic. If you are on the fence, which I obviously was at 5 to 10, I am optimistic of what it can be. I'm not going to be like everybody else. There's a lot of national narrative, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's back to being the dark horse Final Four team. It's back to being it does seem a little bit hasty or a little bit too far. That's such a high bar.
I feel better about this team against a 10 seed in the tournament an 11 seed in the tournament, and a 3 seed, maybe a certain 2 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Do I feel great about this team against a 1 seed or a 2 seed right now, like Tennessee or St. John's right now?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And do I feel confidence in this team being consistent enough week after week? I still have to see more, Derek. I think I need to see
Oh, yeah.
2 wins in the Big Ten tournament to be like, all right, that team can be consistent game after game after game, because that's the question here. We see the flashes, just like Matt Painter said, when they hit threes, they can beat anybody. What about when they're not making threes? What if they would have gone 7 for, what was it, 30 or 29 tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that happens, can this team win a game? I don't have a lot of confidence in that. Well, there's other teams, like the good teams that make runs have multiple ways of winning. Last year's team was one of that. They started to play defense at the right time of year. Can this team stop turning it over? They started to do that. I'm starting to feel like, hey, they're getting better at that. They're starting to at least get some stops at some opportune times. So I'm feeling like the confidence is going up. I'm at a 7 right now that I feel like this team can be a Sweet 16 team. Is it going to be the Final Four team? I just haven't seen enough consistency, and they're young, right? Like that's what concerns me about this. But I feel a heck of a lot better than I did after that New York game.
Absolutely. No, I think 7, and like you said, to mention there, I'm kind of setting the bar at Sweet 16 still. I think would be a really good. I'm not going to try to say that people can't shoot for more, but that would be a really nice accomplishment. Back-to-back Sweet 16s, and you're talking about a brand new team and everything like that. And then once you get there, then anything can happen. Especially, is there an upset in your bracket? We saw, when. I hate to mention it, but when Loyola got there, it's like, oh, Oregon State, we didn't expect you to be here.
Illinois got Duquesne second round last year, right? Like that was huge. Like half of it's draw, like getting some luck of the draw once you get there. Now they had to pay for it once you get to UConn, but
Right.
Illinois. I've always said that. I know our boy Anand doesn't like when I say it, but they were kind of due for something to break in their bracket. So that's what you got to hope for as well, right? Is you hit your shots, but you also got to do those little things that win games, and they're starting to do that more.
No doubt. And for veterans to be more reliable, and for Trey to really, flip the switch in a big way, for Kylan to be somebody, at least defensively, he's not going to be probably a big numbers guy on offense. And still, when he pulls up from 3, I don't have a ton of confidence in it. And he needs to get better as far as that goes, if it is going to come around this year. But, and Ben, if he can play a nice role, he's at least – he fought as well as he could have fought against TKR, and thought he fought well against Golden and made a couple, threes. And so that's good. And I think that's where you start it to elevate the floor. I think those are elevating the floor type of things. Riley.
The veterans, right? Like the veterans. We know Will and KJ can go off, but when you get Kyle and Trey White, Benham Rickhouse, like Trey White and Kyle Boswell are playing their best basketball of the year right now. Ben is playing solid basketball, making some shots, trying hard on defense. I thought one of the big keys was went up and elevated for a rebound after I think Purdue had 2 straight offensive rebounds. He gets fouled. He only split the free throws, but still just getting possession of the ball and getting a point and stopping a Purdue possession. Like that was a big moment. So just those guys have just lifted, as you said, the floor of this team. It's been what we've been waiting for a long time.
Definitely. That's part of the mixture that Brad was shooting for is kind of these these high upside freshmen NBA type talents with some veteran players that would give you some consistency, something, a level of foundation to build on. And, they also have, when Trey White has a double-double, a 20 and 10, he's obviously someone that elevates towards the ceiling as well. But yeah, no doubt with what those guys are doing here recently. We'll see if the defense, I think the defense obviously took a step back tonight a little bit. We'll see where it goes from here. This is a tough matchup for just about anybody, given Braden and TKR. But that's another area where if they are a little bit more improved there, if there's a little bit more improvement in terms of their toughness, their intensity on a night-to-night basis, if that's part of their makeup, then that's another thing that I think that raises their floor. But, trustworthiness, if that's a word, in crunch time, not entirely, it's not Braden Smith level, Purdue level, even though they were the ones on the wrong side of it tonight. But I like the way it's trending. I think it's trending in a positive direction. Obviously, they're going to have confidence, and also that tonight's a big thing to where they're not going to be in the 8-9, to where they're not going to see a 1 seed in the second weekend or second game. That can change the path to actually, hitting a certain bar like a Sweet 16 or farther.
I think the way I would describe it is, like you said, Derek, I think for us, the goal, I think, was always Sweet 16. Like, if you can do it 2 years in a row, especially with a young team, like that's a really great year. And then you see where you can go from there. But I have more confidence that Illinois is able to do that just because of what they've been doing. And then, as you said, they're setting up a better path. In the Big Ten tournament, Illinois will be the 6th or the 7th seed. So you get to play at the night games, not the early morning tip-off. An 8-9 game against, like, Indiana, I would have been dreading because Indiana's playing better basketball. You still could play Indiana if they're the 10 seed and lose to Ohio State. But I just think, getting the lower part of the bracket, you got a chance to make some noise there and add some more quad one victories. They're the 6th seed if Washington beats Oregon, which I don't think is going to happen. So they're likely the 7th seed. I believe that's a 5:30 tip-off on Thursday. But most importantly, Derek, we just had him on the podcast, Brad Evans from the Gaming Juice. He updated his big board. As Illinois is the last 6th seed.
Wow, seed line movement.
So I don't know if they get there, but if you get one or two more wins in the Big Ten tournament, I think you're starting to, like, you'd solidify yourself as a 6th seed. And the difference between the 2 and 3 seeds, I think, is pretty big here. Tennessee, Michigan State, Alabama, St. John's. So Illinois would likely get, I think, St. John's because they haven't played them this year, but they could get Alabama or Tennessee. But then you get Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Iowa State. I feel better playing one of those teams. I think they're pretty similar to you. So, yeah, you're just setting up your path where it gets a little bit easier getting off that 8-9 game, man, because those 1 seeds are ridiculous, and an 8-9 game would just be total toss-up.
For sure. Yeah, and to stick as a 6, whether you're there right now, of course, obviously it doesn't matter as of this moment, but you'd have to last in Indy for a day or two. Ultimately, in terms of wins, like extending it on forward, you can't lose day 1 Big Ten tournament. I would imagine stick as a 6 seed. I think you've elevated your floor most likely past to where you wouldn't fall to an 8, especially, it's Ohio State. It's like a quad 1 game, and that's not going to be something that's going to hurt you on the resume as far as that goes. But also, yeah, I mean, just opportunity if you were there in Indy to be able to pull off a couple of wins, couple quad 1 wins, and ultimately, are you sneaking your way back into the back end of the 5 seed line? That could be something that you ultimately could do as well. So,
can I bring this up, Derek? Like, they have 8 quad 1 wins now after tonight, which is a marquee win, one of their 5 best wins of the year. But they're tied with Oregon. I think this is 8th or 9th in the country for quad 1 wins at 8. Got a chance for a couple more in Indy, and then you're really putting yourself in some elite territory of quad 1 victories and resume. And we know their strength of schedule is up there. Now, if you can get that strength of record up, I think you are putting yourself in that, 4 or 5 seed. I know people get nervous about that because you play a 1 seed potentially in the Sweet 16, but getting to a Sweet 16 gets a little bit easier if you're on that 5 seed line. So they got a chance for movement, man. Kudos to them for battling back, fighting after what we saw against Duke.
Yeah, no doubt. I wonder, I've just had this thought, and it might be a stupid one. I want to ask your thoughts.
Yeah.
If they go on a run in Indy and they finish at a high point and going into Selection Sunday, does that help Brad sell it all to the committee? Like, hey, we didn't have KJ for USC when we lost. We didn't have Tommy for Nebraska when we lost.
Yeah.
Like, does the wholeness, we're not whole yet type of thing play more if they, as they get whole, look like a really good team? I don't know.
Well, I'm trying to think of what that looks like, because winning 4 games in 4 days is really tough, right? Like, winning the Big Ten tournament, I think they'd be a 4 seed at the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, you had 4 quad 1 victories, 3 more quad 1A victories. If they got that, I mean, you'd be shooting up, just like they did last year. They went from like a 5 to a 3, right, in that weekend probably. But yeah, like, I don't know how much that helps. Like,
yeah, maybe it doesn't matter that much at this point
because like
gone through stuff.
Yeah, other teams have gone through stuff, but maybe it helps them right now. Say they win 1 game in the Big Ten tournament, lose 1. Maybe that helps them, be a 6 seed, right? If they had 1 more quad 1, but I don't think it's going to make them like a 5. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to boost them up a little bit. I think it could boost them up like 2 spots on the overall seed line. Like, yeah, now they're healthy. They won 5 games in a row, and then they lost in the Big Ten tournament semifinals. Let's put this team as a firm 6, or maybe even put them in the 5 seed discussion.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. But they are going in the right direction. Again, like the path, I think especially, and you can get into, I know that Brad Evans said at one point, maybe you want to be a 6 instead of a 5. So it's like, hey, don't win too much type of thing, because the 12s are really good. And as far as that goes, but that'd be a lot different of a conversation. Remember, we were on a podcast not long ago, like, if they don't win Iowa, they might not make the NCAA tournament. So this is a lot more fun. I'm glad we're doing this.
It's a little bit more fun to talk about. Jimmy the Layup, $9.99 super chat. Has any Illini had bigger production swings from the first to second half than Ben has had in the last 3 games? Yeah, he's been flirting with what do people call it? The trillion now? Is it the Tony Snell?
The Tony Snell, I'm familiar with that one. I don't know.
Scott Ritchie keeps saying the trillion. I don't even know what that means. I thought you kids talked like that.
I don't know. I know the Tony Snell.
But yeah, he had 1 steal, and Scott Ritchie said that kept him from like the Tony Snell at the point. So no, he's had really good second halves the last couple of games. So kudos to him, man. And we'll get into a conversation about his future here in a moment. Timothy Evans, $24.99 super chat. Thank you, Timothy. Appreciate you guys making this season even more enjoyable. You are must watch after every game, or at least after every one. We get it. I'm the same way with the Bears. Can't wait to go through the postseason with you guys for as long as possible. Shout out Timothy. That's a big super chat. We appreciate you guys following along. And yeah, you guys make this fun too. And last year's postseason was fun doing all these post games. So we love doing them, and appreciate you guys for hopping on with us. All right, Derek, let's play our little game real quick before we get out of here. Last home game of the season. The crowd brought it. I know it was unofficial today, Derek. And I know when I was on campus, I was probably sleeping by the time this game tipped off, because, boy, we got after it. But yeah, the crowd brought it today, and the pops in this arena were awesome. It was great. It was just a great atmosphere. But it's the last game of the season, so who's going to be back? Confidence meter in these guys returning for next year. Let's start with one, Kasparas Yakashonis. 1 out of 10, Derek. 1 being no chance, 10 being he will definitely be back.
0.
You're not even going 1. You're going 0.
Not even a 1. 0. I understand that maybe he's not a top 5 pick anymore, but the bottom's not going to fall off to where he's not a lottery pick anymore. And nobody who's a projected lottery pick comes back to college. It shouldn't. It doesn't make financial sense. It doesn't make sense in terms of risk, injury, whatever. 0.
Yeah, maybe he's closer to 10 now than 5. Right? I don't even know if that's the case. Jonathan Gavoni still has a number 6, right? He showed early in the season what he can be. I'm a huge KJ fan. He's not played all that great the last couple games, but he's still a phenomenal talent, and the potential is there. But yeah, I would go 0 on a scale of 1 to 10 as well. There's no chance. All right, Will Riley.
Oh man, I think the Sam Vecini 49th on his recent big board is the only thing holding me back from being 1, because I think that the way it's been even more than a month sample size now where he has played pretty consistent basketball, and he's done a lot. I think the playmaking he's shown at 6'8", upwards of 6'9", is got to be super appealing to the next level. I think that's something that people will buy as a trait that they're willing to just roll the dice on, even if there is some questions about defense and strength and
my biggest question with
shot
him,
making.
My biggest question with 2 questions for him. The 3-point shooting, he's not been great, right? And that's got to be a strength of his in the NBA. Second is athleticism.
That's fair.
Can you guard? Can you guard in the NBA? Now, he's starting to guard better. He's still not good there, right? But like Brad Underwood is now playing him 37, 36, 37 minutes the last couple games, mostly due to his offense. But I think they're going to have questions there. I think there's going to be teams that really like him, Derek. I think there's going to be teams that would have him as a second-round pick. But ultimately, the upside's pretty big. So I would go 1, just that there can be a chance. But, Gavoni told me just point blank, he would be completely shocked if Will Riley came back for another year. So I think the NBA is going to pay him millions of dollars, whether that's the 20th pick or whether that's the 40th pick, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a first-round pick. The way he's trending, the way he's playing in some big moments, obviously he could still be a top 40 pick and get some nice money. I know that Johnny Furphy last year out of Kansas, kind of similar situation, international guy, one and done in college, and some thought he was going to be a first rounder. He fell just outside, but still ended up with, I think, a 4-year contract with some good guaranteed money, upwards of, I think, I have it right, $2 million a year or a little bit more than that. So I think that he's got a chance to earn really good money. If it is a decision though, between if you're a fringe first round, maybe second round guy, then there's a real conversation to be had, because you are talking about, some real upwards of your guarantee if you come back. And
because if you're an early second round pick, late first round, even like late first round, you're probably going to go still, but like early second round, you make $1 million to $1.5 million per year. You can make that in college.
Yeah, right. No doubt. So I think that's something to look at. But the way he's trending, I don't have any expectation that he's coming back. And I think that the Dame Sars theme that's coming for Illinois, which has been there for a while, like that's not a new thing. I think they are connected. I think it is a situation where Will is going to be on his way, and then if Illinois can close this thing down with Dame, that he'd be filling those shoes.
Tomislav Visic, number 62 on Gavoni's big board.
I expect him to come back. Is it an 8 or a 9?
I go 8. I go 8, right?
Yeah, that's probably right. I saw, as far as where he's mocked, and I don't think he'll climb anywhere further to where he wouldn't be. I think his ceiling's probably a 2-way guy this year.
Yeah.
If I were to gauge it, and that you can easily beat that. And now it's not my money, so I can't maybe say easily, but
it's like a Coleman decision, right?
Pretty easily beat that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a Coleman Hawkins decision. So I would go 8 there. Benham Murkhouse, senior night tonight for Benham Murkhouse, but the Pavia ruling allows him to come back for another year because of the NAIA years that he had. So Benham Murkhouse, what are you at, Derek? We did this on the sideline before the game, so that's where the game kind of comes from. This is probably the most interesting one for me.
I don't want to steal your thought. You gave you were the first one to throw out a number. I want you to give your number. I agree with you, but
I said a better chance than not.
Yeah,
I'm going to go a 6.5 that Benham Murkhouse is back at Illinois next year. This is no insight other than just gut feel. Okay, so this is just Derek and I paying attention. I think Illinois values him a lot, and I think he's enjoyed despite the ups and downs. And there's been hard times for Benham Murkhouse, right? He's not lived up to what my expectations were for this year, but I still think he's a valuable player. What's the price is going to be really interesting for that. But I do think, man, you and I have heard the prices are going to be so high in the portal this year because you have revenue sharing coming, but you also have the NIL budgets getting unloaded once this transfer portal opens, because they don't know if they're going to be able to use these NIL budgets pay for play. They're going to have to actually do true NIL. So that's what makes me nervous about going into the portal and needing 5 players. So if you can get Ivisic, Boswell, Trey White, Benham Murkhouse, Merez Johnson, Jake Davis back, that is something you can build on. And having a veteran team like that, I think Benham Murkhouse can get a lot better. We've seen so many second-year leaps out of transfers. You wonder how good Boswell, Trey, and Benham Murkhouse could be with Visic and Merez taking a huge leap in their second years in college basketball as well. So I just think Illinois is going to prioritize him, man. I think they really would like him back, just maybe in a better role that suits him.
I agree with all that. I think that along what you just said, I think retention is going to be something that's prioritized. I agree. I believe Brad when he says yesterday we want him back, and that we're going to explore that fully. And we've had conversations about it being something that we, pursue. But I think with just about anybody, what you put into the parentheses after you say I want a player back is at the right price or close and in the right role. So is he willing to play a bench role next year? The money part of it, I don't know how different they will be. Would you pay him what you're paying him this year? You could argue that it maybe shouldn't be as high, but then like you said, if the budgets are going way, even doubling in some cases, that maybe he would be worth it versus, but then you wonder about his open market. I do think that they'll try. Does Ben want to come back for that role? Does he have any negative feeling about, let's be honest, some really negative outside talk about him? And I think, I don't know how much he's paid attention to it. Certainly it's impacted him in some way. When he, after he's at church saying, I'm not the most favorite person around here. So that's a real thing. I don't know. Some people don't want to stay in a situation like that, and some are able to block it out and don't mind it as much. I do know that Brad has been, not to turn this into a whole Ben Humrickhouse podcast, but Brad has been really supportive, outwardly supportive, and I think that's real. So, and then even I wrote it in my notebook, which if you didn't read it, you can go check it out. He talked about how much he values playing for Brad and what he, gained from that. And I think that there is a real strong relationship, and I could see him being back. So yeah, 6.5, maybe even a 7, but it's probably more determinant on how Ben feels about it than how Illinois feels about it.
After all the shooting struggles, he's shooting 35% from 3. That's under what I thought it would be, but it's making a comeback. He's last 3 games, Ben Humrickhouse is 7 for 14. So that's more of the shooter I thought, and that's the role I thought. 20, 25 minutes, something like that, and just shooting open shots. And he's been confident, man, the last couple of games. And I always thought with Ben Humrickhouse, it would be dependent on how he finishes the season. And I'm encouraged by how he's finishing the season there.
Yeah, I think that would be important going forward, but I think he's played with some more consistent toughness and physicality when asked upon. He's been put in some tough situations. Hey, here's Vlad Golden and TKR to go battle with around the paint. So I give him credit for that. And then the shot making's that's his thing. That's his top asset as a player. But can you do some other things? Can you be adaptable in a role? And there's obviously some booty ball stuff in there too that you can tap into at times, or maybe even build on going into next year. So he's more comfortable. He looks more comfortable, or whatever it is about him. He seems to be settled in more than where he had been previously.
Kyle Boswell, Trey White, I would hope those are 10s right now.
I would hope so. I wouldn't question. I feel like Kylan, you would fully expect Trey.
He's your guy, right? Like Brad has poured empowerment into him and all that. And let's be honest. Like a month ago, we're sitting here going, "Who's coming back? Is Dre Gibbs-Allhorn one of the top guys you want to prioritize?" And Kylan, I think, is certainly taking over that. And Trey White a month ago, I didn't know what this was going to be, but again, getting these guys back for a second year to be seniors, like just be so good for this program.
Yeah, I think as far as Kylan goes, as long as he's continuously on board with, being like a secondary ball handler type of guy, not saying it couldn't, be a split depending on what that piece looks like. I mean, that's who he's been in his collegiate career. He is going to go into his final year of eligibility. There have been guys like that have said, okay, in my final season, I got to be the on-ball, clear number 1 ball handler. I'm not saying that he would be. I would put him at like a 9. Ultimately, I think, he's at home. He's got, he's building momentum here. He could be a leader. It can be really valuable in terms of carryover. With Trey, TA was his primary recruiter. Is there any type of feeling beyond that now that, he's not going to be here? It does seem like Trey is very well liked in the locker room. Kylan seems to have a really good vibe with him and those guys as veterans. And I think it's something. And also, just, role is important there too. I mentioned, if they turn Will Riley into Dame Sarr, what does that mean for Trey White? And what is Morez Johnson coming back and being a non-shooting big man who you worry about floor spacing and pairing? And if he shoots like this going to the end of the year, you're gonna be like, all right, Trey can make threes, you're fine. So is that something that you wonder about? But I would really like to have Trey back to kind of put an easy line on it, and hopefully, he feels the same way.
All right, security guy saying we need to get out of here. But before that, Illinois, if they're the 6th seed, which would mean Washington would have to beat Oregon, which is unlikely. You'd play either Rutgers or Minnesota, whoever wins that game. I believe that's how it goes out. I guess you could play Nebraska as well. No, I don't think so. But I would rather play Minnesota out of those two teams. Just match up. Just a matchup. They play tougher, but just matchup. You don't want Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey going on a heater. Indiana or Ohio State, who would you rather have if you're the 7 seed? Because whoever loses, if you're the 7 seed, whoever loses this weekend, you would get them.
It's a tough question. So
I don't want part of Indiana.
I don't really. That was my answer too. Now, Ohio State's got some tough guys. I mean, Thornton and Mobley can really hurt you. And obviously, Devin Royal had a huge day against you. But
I just love how you match up against their front court.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd probably rather have Ohio State. And it is a Mike Woodson coach team, though. So maybe you'd be like, the Diebler's been fantastic. But, yeah, I would go Ohio State.
Luke Goody, just in that
building.
True.
And
look at this, St. Dom. Let's end with this. I owe Brad an apology because I thought for sure Illinois was going 0-3. At best 1-2 in the stretch. Never expected 3-0. Look at St. Dom. Proud of you, man. Proud of you.
Wow.
Proud of you.
I mean,
Don't give up on a Brad Underwood team, man. 6 straight years of 20 wins, Derek.
It's great consistency. It's something that, it's fair to still say, they got to – we'll see how it shakes out. I think most people – just the premise of they went through –
Sorry, it's funny because Ken Pom projected this team to go 20-12 – or 20-11, 12-8 in the Big Ten before the season, and that's what they ended up.
And I'd have to pull crazy. Ken Pom is – I know it's a computer or whatever. It's computer generated. It's genius. But I have to pull it up. But, Joe Lunardi might have had Illinois as a 6 seed going into, his preseason way too early, bracketology, something like that. So this isn't like a crazy outcome for Illinois ultimately. And if you just said it would be rocky and it would take time to level out, but you had some momentum going in the postseason and you were thought to be dangerous, and Will Riley was bad for a while, but then great. And KJ's had times where he's awesome and then maybe not as good, but most people would take that. Most people would take that for sure. And I give Brad a lot of credit for making sure this didn't unravel. This didn't just turn out to be total turmoil. And even in a 22-23 season, not that he deserves some huge smack on the back for a 8-9 game, one out, but that team didn't bottom out. That team, for all the stuff going around, they ended up, in a down year, were in an 8-9 game. So this team can do a lot more than that, and they're playing like a team that can. We just got to see what that path looks like coming forward.
And I believe now that Brad and Matt Painter, again, are tied for most wins in the Big Ten. The last
81 over the last 6 years, or I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Because Purdue 13-7, Illinois 12-8. Yeah. And they came in, Brad was one ahead. So just amazing.
Crazy.
All right.
Illinois needed to finally give them an L, one of those. I did.
5-game losing streak before this one. Thank you to the more than 700 people at one point on this, thousands of people watching this live. We appreciate you guys. Hit that like button on the way out of the YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys. Subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell. And if you're listening to the podcast, give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. Plenty more coming from State Farm Center in the next couple of days. And then we head on the road for the postseason for we'll see how long. We'll see. The wife's got to deal with it. The kids got to deal with it. But we're on the road for the postseason, and we'll join you all guys there. Thank you for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.